This is the rundown where every week we discuss the top news stories from a Catholic angle. We've had the debate. We have to unpack the debate. And since we've released our last rundown show, Amy Cohen Barrett's been nominated to the High Court. Is she going to be a good justice? Will she even get confirmed? We'll talk about that. Then in ecclesiastical news, we're going to talk about Cardinal Zen, who showed up to Rome and nobody was there to meet with him. And then Cardinal Pell returns to Rome. Two cardinals in the started. And we've already lost Steve.
I don't know what's going on here.
Oh man!
Just over the house with SpongeBob. I'm out of here.
All right. So the debate happened. It actually happened. I wasn't sure if it was going to happen, guys, because to be honest, I thought that Biden was just going to quote unquote get COVID-19 and not show up to the debates, but he showed up, and he was alive and awake. And wearing a wire.
For the Joe Rogan debate.
I would prefer that. Yeah, I would love to have a Joe Rogan debate. Okay, so lots of things were said in the debate. If you didn't watch it, you probably didn't miss out on anything informative. But here are the highlights. Joe Biden called President Trump a clown twice. He said, "You're the worst president in American history." He said, "Will you just shut up?" Trump, for his part, interrupted Joe Biden, I think basically every single time the man tried to speak. He called him a liar. He said, "China ate your lunch." He said, "I've done more in 47 months than you've done in 47 years," referring to his 47 years of public service, Joe Biden's.
It was 180 years.
It was an insult fest. At one point early on in the debate, Chris Wallace, Fox News Sunday host, was actually debating Trump, and Trump said, "I guess I'll have to debate you too, but that's fine. I'm not surprised." And that was true for the entire night. Every time that Trump wanted to bring up some of the personal dirt on Biden, specifically Hunter Biden, his son, getting paid $3.5 million by consulting agreements in Moscow and Ukraine and China, Chris Wallace was there to shut him down. So there's a lot to unpack. Steve, I think that Biden was wearing a wire. I think that there's plenty of evidence of that. What say you?
Well, Spiro came out with a video last night about the contacts, and the tech is out there for the contacts to show like a teleprompter source in them. He went on for about 8 minutes. It wasn't dark, I don't think, but I can't remember the group that is. I'll send you the video. We'll have it in the show notes what he's talking about. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the 180 years thing, that was Biden's one of his many, many gaffes. He was in Ohio yesterday. I watched 5 minutes. First, thought they should come up with a little thing that if you're driving heavy machinery, do not operate heavy machinery when listening to this, because he'll put you to sleep. He puts himself to sleep. He says some incoherent things going, there's no way that guy was on target for 90 minutes or at least an hour.
Yes, it was scheduled to be 90 minutes. I think they went quite a bit over time. I think that Joe Biden actually did a fine job.
Because the bar was so low that
the bar was low, and people were expecting a cadaver to show up, and indeed one did. He looked like he was The Walking Dead, but he didn't have any major gaffes. He didn't get thrown off by the Trump interruptions, which I think the Trump interruptions were strategic. He probably knew that Joe was wired up and drugged up. Joe's eyes were dilated. I mean, they had him drugged up and propped up. He took 3 days off the campaign just to get his body ready to stay awake at 10 o'clock at night, because he's an old man and he just doesn't function at 10 o'clock at night. So I don't know. I don't even know, Ryan, if they're going to do a second or third debate after this fiasco.
I don't know how you could, honestly. Now, in full disclosure, I actually didn't watch it. I was with friends drinking some delicious wine, which was not needed to get through the debate because we just didn't watch it. I caught maybe the tail end of it and got the recap from people later. So all of my interest, I've kind of taken the line from somebody else who coined the terms. I can't take the credit for it. I decided to miss America's Next Top President reality show. Because in so many ways, a lot of it is a show. It is a reality show, and it's like politics itself is show business for ugly people. So, as the general saying goes. And with Trump Biden, I didn't expect very much. I mean, my expectations as a non-believer in republicanism or democracy are already so low for what we're going to get. It's either, a certain communism with President Harris, because Biden's either going to slip and fall or get 25th Amendment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trump on the other side, which could end up staving off that communism for 4 years, could end up being a lot worse. I don't know. We'll find out. So, I mean, that much is clear. But I already have so little enthusiasm for the system. I see this debate is rather endemic for why, actually. Because nobody really wants to talk about real issues.
Yeah.
Things just happen, and then the media goes off on these peripheral social things, some of them important, some of them not, and it just continues barreling down the road of more and more nonsense and insanity. So I look at the spectacle of this debate where you've got basically two old men yelling at each other. You've got a journalist pretending to basically a political partisan while pretending to be an objective journalist. I see all of this as indicative of kind of where we are, where none of the politics really matter. They're all largely for show. The media wants to position itself as the arbiter of what isn't true, rather than simply reporting information. And the actual politics is done by somebody else that we usually don't see.
Let's talk about some of the issues that came up, Steve, just from a Catholic point of view. I thought Trump was really strong on law and order. And I thought one of the high points of the night was when he told Joe Biden, I have received the endorsements of effectively every single law enforcement agency in the country. And can you name one? Can you name one law enforcement agency or group or advocacy group or association of any kind that has endorsed you? And Joe definitely froze. Now we've talked a little bit about the militarization of the police and the police state that we live in now, and weaponizing the police in COVID-19 84 situations. But generally speaking, that doesn't necessarily mean we're in principle opposed to law and order or policing. And I thought that was a good point that Trump made.
Yeah, it's also, Biden was saying that Antifa is an idea.
Yeah, exactly, and he refused to condemn. So
is it a good one or a bad one?
Yeah, so this is where Chris Wallace jumps in, and he says, "Will you, Donald Trump? Will you categorically say that you do not support white supremacists?" And he says, "Sure," like 3 times. He's like, "Sure, I'll say that, but what about Antifa, right?" And Joe Biden comes in, like you said, Steve, and says, "Well, Antifa is not really a group. It's not a group of people. It's just an idea. It's not an actual terrorist group." What kind of BS is that?
You can tell when Joe wasn't listening to his handlers at that time. But I think Trump got him to say that he doesn't want to defund the police, and Trump jumped back in saying, "Well, you just lost your left." He did that a couple times, make Joe say something and go, "You just lost your base."
Yes. I thought just strategically, I thought that was. If you hated the tone of the debate, which many people did, I didn't. I loved it, but a lot of people were turned off by the tone of the debate. That's fine. I don't think that there's a clear winner or a loser. If you liked Trump, you liked what you saw. If you liked Biden, you liked what you saw. But the one strategic thing that Trump was able to accomplish in the debate was to drive a wedge between Joe Biden and the alt-left. And he did that, like you said, Steve, he did that on law and order. He also did that on the environment. He forced Biden to say that he does not support the Green New Deal, that he supports the Biden environmentalist plan, which is, a version of the Green New Deal, just a light version.
How about Biden saying, "I am the Democratic Party"?
And on healthcare too, he forced Biden to say that I only want to extend the public option to those who qualify for Medicaid, for the very poor, not the public option for everybody. So on healthcare, on the environment, on law and order, Biden has now lost the left. And what's so miraculous about Trump, Ryan and Steve, that I think people just don't give him credit for is a lot of times he just speaks so plainly. He actually says what he's thinking. He says, if you say this, Joe, you're going to lose the left. Like no other politician would say that. You know what I mean? Like no one would be so forward and bold as to say, well, I can't say this or I'm going to lose my base. Or if you say that, you're going to lose your base. I mean, they're literally just, but Trump in some cases means what he says. And I believe that he means what he says when he says he's going to deliver a vaccine and force all of us to take it. I believe that he means what he says.
Yeah, they both agreed to that one.
Well, that was so funny because all of a sudden Biden, who as you said, I am the Democrat Party. Biden is saying now, well, I don't know about this vaccine. I don't trust Trump and I don't trust his scientists. And now the Democrats, who are the party of the vaccines, are the anti-vaxxers, and suddenly the Republicans are the pro-vaxxers. How did that happen? I'm going to sip my coffee while you debate it.
Right. Well, it's more of the, I don't know, just the Trump derangement syndrome we've seen where, Trump's for it. So we have to induce all this question and thought, because I mean, if Obama was president, there's no doubt if he was touting a vaccine, we'll be ready, it would be exactly the opposite. You'd have Republicans who normally are like, oh yeah, I support vaccines, and but I can't trust an Obama vaccine. And then the Democrats would be saying, yeah, you've got to take your vaccine. You're denying science. And Trump has taken that very line. Actually, was calling Kamala Harris's remarks on it be dangerous, anti-science, anti-vaxxers, all these terms. Wait, Trump himself just a couple of years ago was an anti-vaxxer. He has a vaccine-injured relative nephew, I think, unless I'm mistaken, and he started getting into that for a while. Supposedly, Bill Gates related somewhere that Fauci had set Trump straight on that. I don't know the truth of that kind of murky story. It was kind of this passing comment by Bill Gates. I have no idea. I mean, the problem is, again, it becomes kind of this, we have to do, it's just like with war. When Democrats are in office, Republicans are magically anti-war. When Republicans are in office, they're in waging a war, I might add, they're as pro-war as you can get. And a lot of the Republican opposition to Trump is that he's not pro-war. And even though he's dropped a ton of bombs, it's not enough for the bloodthirsty neocons. People like George Weigel is out there defending the murder of innocent civilians because America did it, so therefore it was great. Even though his own guy, JP2, taught explicitly against that. Veritatis Splendor is a great line about that. The idea you can do evil so that good will come of it, and why governments do this and it's wrong. But anyway, beside all that.
Well, that's a great point, though, Ryan. I just want to unpack the war point, because we all remember in 2016, in the debates especially, when Trump was debating against Jeb Bush, and he said, your brother screwed up. Your brother invaded countries and he shouldn't have. And Trump was the only one on the stage who opposed the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, that was revolutionary. And I don't understand. I mean, you're right. Prior to that, any red-blooded American, America, flag-toting, truck driving, gun rack, red-blooded America would have said, we need to kill some terrorists and we need to get in there and get. And then now all of a sudden, all those people are isolationists because Trump.
Remember Dr. Paul back in Charleston debate, or was it Myrtle Beach? It was somewhere in South Kakalaki that he quoted the Golden Rule, and they booed him.
Hey, speaking of the Carolinas, Trump listed North Carolina by name, Steve, as being one of those states in which the governor had gone nuts with the COVID stuff and they needed to reopen. He listed Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina, like by name.
Yeah, we were driving the other day, U-Haul, and you see all the lawn signs, the lawn debates, the lawn wars. You get Trump, Biden. Going, what? I wonder how that guy gets along with his neighbors. There's only been a few Cooper signs that I've seen, and they all say fire Cooper. Unless this thing is rigged, shocker. There's no way that guy's going to get reelected.
Okay, well, speaking of rigging the election, and I'm sure Ryan's going to jump in on this, there was a huge debate at the debate about the integrity of the election. That was one of the final points brought up by the debater, Chris Wallace, who was debating alongside Joe Biden. And he was basically making the point that, hey, Trump, you have said previously that you would not accept the results of the election, especially if they appear to show you winning on election night, and then it's later overturned by this swarm of mail-in ballots. So mail-in ballots was a big portion of it, but also there was sort of this underlying theme, and Trump even said it. They attempted a coup against me. They attempted a coup against me with Russiagate, with the fake impeachment, and now they want to do these mail-in ballots. He said, stand by. He actually said that to the Proud Boys. He said, stand by.
Yeah, there's still a coup in the plan right now. They remember that retired general. He's actually talking about it, saying, there's actually talk about what if Trump doesn't peacefully leave. Like, he hasn't said anything about it. There's been no evidence that he would, not go if he loses fairly. But they're already got a plan going. I mean, like they say overseas, there's guys overseas watching. In Ireland thinks that there'll be bloodshed in the States because of it. Nigel Farage was on there talking yesterday, or yesterday before, saying that how he's a friend of Trump, but he wished he would backed off a little bit during the debate.
I thought Nigel's analysis of the debate was actually really on point.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You should link that up. I haven't actually seen his. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Did you know that the presidents can control hurricanes? I did not know that till the debate.
Yeah, hurricanes and fires too.
And fires.
Yeah, and the temperature. Yeah,
Wasn't
the environment did come up.
Name or climate and last name change.
Right.
I was shocked that he didn't bring up. I was thinking of Ryan during that when they asked about the fires. I was shocked that Trump didn't bring up the arsonist.
Well, he did bring up forest management, and I've never once seen a Republican actually stand on the stage toe to toe when this so-called specter of global warming comes up and say that, well, you guys are too worried about toads to manage your forests, and that's why they burn. And he said, I've stood in European cities, in forested European cities that have never had this problem because they clear out the underbrush, and you people in California are just too inept, lazy, stupid, or unwilling to manage your forests, and that's why they're constantly
what's literally not seeing the forest for the trees. In this case, my father was a USDA firefighter. My father-in-law is a USDA firefighter, and so he had to deal with that kind of management in California for a number of years. And then at a certain point, the animal rights activists started suing and saying, no, you can't do that. You'll hurt some snow owls and whatever you want to fill in the blanks. So they weren't allowed to manage the forest anymore. They weren't allowed to do control burns. They weren't allowed to do, even the Indians did control burns. I'm sorry, the Native Americans. What's the right term to use nowadays? I don't know. They keep changing it on me. They used to do control burns themselves as well. But then the animal rights activists who, frankly, don't know how to manage nature. They don't actually care about nature. It just becomes something that makes them feel good about protecting some little bird that'll bite them in 2 seconds, right? And so then the whole thing starts burning, and all these things happen because they have all these laws. You can't manage the forest. P&G, which is the big power company there, they're not allowed to manage the trees and other things that are near their lines, because they might injure the environment. But then the state wants to put them on the hook when the stuff happens. And I mean, literally, you're going to be at a point where California is going to be like some third world country where you don't even know if your power is going to work because all these, basically because of government, because government is not going to allow the normal business associations that human beings will make to manage their environment from happening.
I love the fact I've seen multiple parishes in California from top to bottom, from north to south, telling their parishioners, please don't leave. Please don't leave California. Please stay here. It's not that bad. We need to stay here and fight. I'm like, I got out of there. All right. One other thing about the debate, so speaking of the environment, is, typically in these debates, the environment is this, this specter of terror that has to be debated, and we're constantly on the brink of losing humanity. But that wasn't the case in this debate, because there's something even more important than the environment. It's COVID-19, the dreaded virus, the pandemic. And both men had very different reactions to COVID. Trump was called out for not being pro-mask enough. He was called out for not locking down the entire country, although then he was to blame for the economy for the partial lockdown or whatever. Trump came back and said, I think that certain states are only locked down to hurt me, and to throw the election, and that's where he listed North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Biden basically said, and this is terrifying. Biden said that if he gets in, there will be a federal mask mandate and there will be a federal lockdown. Federal. Now that's something Trump hasn't done yet. I mean, we've been critical of him on this show, but he's not done that.
I'm surprised he hasn't. Well, take that back. I wish it like Berenson. Trump, Don, if you're on here, just come bring Alex on and have him sit down and talk about the stats here. On all, just somebody hijack all ABC, NBC. I know you can do it, and just start busting out these facts. I mean, I don't know, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy on this? And I'm talking about Trump too. I mean, we're living in freaking clown planet. We're in England just the other day. I think they had 7 people at a girl's birthday party. Cops show up at the door. A bar didn't close down by 10 o'clock. They were open at 10:07. The lights were still on. Ding, 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 knock on the door. You still had the lady getting tasered. You got people, all the weirdness going on.
Mm-hmm.
What was I just saw the other day was they just did a study. Neanderthal genes linked to severe COVID-19. Mosquitoes cannot transmit the coronavirus. Come on. I mean, enough of this crap. I mean, Trump had to just go over and either punch him in the face and shake his hand. One of the touch the man. They're like the Biden thing. They were lowing down his teleprompter, his stage, with all kind of antibacterial stuff, so he could stand there. It's freaking ridiculous, man. I mean, what are we at? 7 months of playing the curve, and
I mean, Trump kind of made fun of Biden for that too. He said, I've never seen you not in a mask. Like you could be standing 200 yards away from somebody and you're still wearing a mask, Joe. What are you afraid of? And Trump even he goes, I'm not anti-mask. He pulled out his mask from his pocket. He's like, look, I wear a mask if I feel like I need to. And people can wear a mask if they need to. If they don't, they don't. That's fine. And he put it back in his pocket. I was shocked at how reasonable the man seemed to be on the muzzle.
Yeah, he was. I wish he'd put the gauntlet down, but yeah, he was reasonable on it. But still, I mean, I don't know. They're afraid to say, "Hey guys, this is just nobody's dying. Literally, nobody's dying from this."
Exactly.
Well, I think Trump played that that whole issue correctly. He let the states go off the deep end if the states wanted to go off the deep end. Really.
Except that he also praised the lockdowns, and then he was even, going after people opening up too early. Oh, no, you shouldn't do that. No, don't do that. And he really got behind it and owned it. And, said this, these were great. We did the greatest job we could have possibly done, and got behind all this stuff. And so, in my opinion, he really owned that element of it.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, he did.
He's not a full-out couchist.
He took credit for delivering ventilators and for active people. and for delivering PPE and all this stuff, but there was never a federal lockdown. The only federal thing that he ever did was he banned China from entering the United States, and he did that like back in February. And at the time, Joe Biden called him a racist for doing that.
Right. Well, you forget too, they all want to go after Trump now. but it was, governors in big states that require tourism, like in New York, for example, and in that lying eugenicist bastard Andrew Cuomo that murdered all the, as many of the elderly in the state as he possibly could, and now pretends like it didn't happen. It's literally like being a Holocaust denier in this case. You murder all these elderly and then you pretend it didn't happen. Well, back in February, he was saying, "Oh, there's no virus danger. Everyone just keep coming and spending your money here. It's going to be great." Inviting people to go out, and everyone forgets that they want to go after Trump. They want to go after these governors that manage whatever the actual problem was. I mean, and really look at the death numbers. Look at this big spike in March, and then whatever the curve is, it really did flatten. And that's because the virus worked itself through the populations that were actually vulnerable to it. Unfortunately, so many of our elderly that the state governors murdered. And then once it petered out, it's only, a handful of people here, a handful of people there, God forbid, but sadly, you with major other health issues and comorbidities. So it's not the Black Plague, it's not the Spanish flu, it's not even a regular flu. It's done. It's over. But then they realized that, but we needed to keep the fear going. That's why we have the case demics up there and everything. Now, the thing is, too, Trump knows this, but he's got a competing thing, which is, irrespective of what's going on behind the scenes, is the media. And the media is like, it's, I don't know, fifth branch of government at this point. It's coming in, like we talked a bit about earlier with Chris Wallace. They're there to assert what is true and not true. Yeah. So you look at that one drug that we're not allowed to mention or YouTube will ban us, right? And you have serious peer-reviewed studies showing it was effective in, at least in helping people weather the symptoms. Nobody claimed it was a cure. Nobody claimed it's foolproof. Not even sure that it actually works as a prophylactic, but it does work to help you weather the symptoms when you actually have them. And they're like, yep, that doesn't work. What this other drug, which is patented and makes tons of money for big pharma, the media just declares based on what? There was absolutely no evidence at all that this other one, Remdesivir, actually worked, right? So we've kind of recount these events going back over the summer. People kind of forgotten about some of these because does anyone? I'm old enough to remember when President Trump was impeached. I mean, that's how I feel right now, because that was only January. But who even remembers that in the wake of COVID 1984? We don't. So, I don't know about you, but.
Well, okay, so I'm old enough to remember when Amy Cohen Barrett was nominated to the Supreme Court, and that was only a week ago.
How about the Hunter Biden thing? I mean, Trump lays out the Russia thing about the 3.5 million, and then Joe talks about, my son had my son did not do cocaine, and then seconds later, my son had a drug problem.
I don't understand that whole line of, I don't get any of it. I don't know why Trump was railing on it so hard, to be honest. I don't know if the debate is the forum to attack a guy's son or whatever. But even then, he couldn't get the words out because Chris Wallace 3 times would jump in and cut him off when he would try to make the point about Hunter Biden being corrupt. The first part of the debate is the second story today in the rundown, which is Amy Cohen Barrett. We recorded our show last week, the day before the announcement of her nomination to the High Court. We all expected that it would be her. We talked a little bit about her, but now it's official, gentlemen and ladies watching. So Amy Cohen Barrett is ostensibly a Roman Catholic. She's a mother of 7, including 2 adopted children. She's a distinguished professor from Notre Dame, has high academic marks, has already been confirmed to the federal bench within the last couple years. Famously, during her confirmation process, Senator Dianne Feinstein, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, probably the ranking villain in the Senate in terms of how old she is, and she's probably on that same program that RBG was on to stay alive. But Feinstein was asking Amy Cohen Barrett, ACB, as she's known, about her Catholic faith, and she said, "The dogma lives loud in you. The dogma lives loud in you." So there is a religious test in the United States of America. If you want to be confirmed to the federal bench, you best not be a practicing or believing Roman Catholic. That's who we have nominated to the High Court. Is it going to happen?
I would say yes, but who knows? I mean, when you got Clarence Thomas as a Catholic, Scalia was a Catholic. Apparently, she worked under Scalia, who was not exactly an originalist. Thomas has been pretty much the best out of all of them. So when everyone came out and said that she was a Scalia disciple, I'm going, yeah, that's not exactly our savior running in from the horses and out of the sun over here to save the Union. Who knows what's good? I mean, everyone's got these high hopes in SCOTUS saving the land, and I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, yes, that's great. We need to put somebody in that, hopefully somebody with some virtue. Obviously, trads on one side will say, women, mothers should be home with their kids. Trads at the same time will say, we need Eric Cohen Barrett in Supreme Court. So we're speaking at both sides of our heads on this thing. It goes to show you that trads in the United States and Catholics all over put SCOTUS up here, the presidency down here, Congress is somewhere down there, who knows, and your state has been thrown in the garbage and wheeled out to the corner already.
I think there's some truth to that, and there really is there's nothing like the Supreme Court. I mean, in terms of the center of power in America, it was not designed to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. You and I know it. You who are watching, you probably know it as well. But Ryan, practically speaking, that's just the facts of the case. It is what it is at this point. So, I mean, don't we kind of have to operate in the system that we have been given? We have to play out the hand we've been dealt, even if it's not a fair hand.
Certainly, in spite of the problem that, I mean, the Supreme Court now is where that all these decisions come down, not the actual lawmaking body, which is really just for the lobbyists to stick reams and reams of more funding for themselves, whoever pays the most congressmen, et cetera. And the system's designed to make that happen. So it is kind of the thing. And it is, to the first question, I think it's a given at this point that she'll be confirmed. Only because you look at way back to, thank you, Harry Reid, got rid of the filibuster. Mm-hmm. So now the Democrats have no way in the Senate to stop that confirmation from happening. So it's going to happen. The question is now, why her? So the Federalist Society, which is the group that floated Gorsuch, remember? And they also floated John Roberts. Now, I remember, we joke that I'm old enough to remember when John Roberts was nominated to the court. Actually, wasn't that long ago. It was only 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was Bush. That was Bush in 2000.
It was Bush, and so he had nominated Roberts to the court, and that's when, of course, the big fight was going on. The Democrats were Chucky Schumer out there, with the declaring the filibuster. We're going to use this. We're not going to even let this happen. And they were actually holding up a good number of Bush appointees to the federal bench and whatnot. So at that time, people were like, I think it was Michael Medved or one of these talk radio guys. It was like talking about, we met with these Clinton people and like Sandy Berger or someone like that. And he said, oh, if John Roberts gets on the court, Roe versus Wade is done. And they just said it dramatically like that. Well, here we are about 20 years later, not even a sign of that. And so you look at Amy Coney Barrett. On the one hand, at least ostensibly from everything we can tell from the outside, she's a faithful Catholic in as much as she believes that the church, teaches. On the other hand, she's a Faucist in terms of government. Into every single legal decision she's ever been on, she sides with the government, irrespective of whether the government's right or wrong. Everything is always, so we talk about like local police that know you, police that are part of your community that you want to support, versus the kind of warrior cop that do things that are shocking to the conscience. We definitely want the former. We don't want the latter. It's just not good. She supports the latter, basically, when all these in all her legal decisions. And there's the Jacobson case way back from 1918. Although there's a lot of confusion about that case too. But she basically was on. There's an article in Politico about her waxing poetic about how important that case was. What did that case do? It said a black man who was under this Massachusetts forced vaccination order, who refused to take the vaccine, and he was fined, and he refused to pay the fine. And Jacobson upheld that he had to pay the fine, basically. And that was the nature of that case. So it actually didn't lay the groundwork per se for forced vaccination. But you know what did was the Buck versus Bell case. And a lot of Americans are absolutely unaware of this chapter of American history, American eugenics, that we were the inspiration for the Nazi eugenic courts. And they said as much, because we had in every state, 35 states of this country, unelected eugenics courts established by law by the government, which basically said, all right, they're going to investigate your test scores. And this is before computers, by the way. And they even go to grave robbing in order to try to work up genetic profiles to the best they understood it back then. And, you know, find whatever deformalities they could detect and determine whether you should be forcibly sterilized or not. It was eugenics. Eugenics was like science. This was science. If you rejected
sterilization methods back then.
And these are the cases that Amy Coney Barrett is praising as these great cases in government overreach. And so, you know, I wonder, is it out of the frying pan into the fire? Are we being maneuvered to say, yeah, we need to do this because of Roe? Then we get the Faucism on the back end.
No, that's a great point. And you know, on the one hand, we think Barrett will be an ally, but we thought Roberts was going to be an ally. And Roberts actually, he became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court after Rehnquist retired, only because of the fact that he had just been nominated and confirmed. And so there was no reason why the Schumer Senate would not reconfirm the same guy that they had just confirmed a year prior. So now Roberts is in charge partly of deciding which cases even come to the Supreme Court. So he is the new Kennedy. He is the swing vote. He relishes being the most powerful man in the world. And he lives in DC and goes to the cocktail parties and all of these things. My observation about people who live in DC is the longer you live there, the more leftist you become, the more part of the swamp you become, because you just get ingrained and indoctrinated into that circle of power. And power tends to corrupt. So maybe if Roe is presented to the court in the very first year that Barrett is on the court, she might vote with a more principled conscience. But I'll tell you what, if it happens in 15 years, I'm with you, Ryan. I don't think that she, at that point in time, would be reliable, because over time, these guys and gals tend to drift left.
It is funny watching these guys just come unhinged during this. I mean, was it Hillary the other day talking about that the GOP, that Trump or McConnell just want power? You're talking about a group that only can survive off power, complaining about not having power, basically griping that someone else is in control. Until they get power, they're going to complain about everyone else having it. But if there was a article years ago, probably about 8-9 years ago, from the Catholic Knight, and he was the only one that I've ever seen write this piece, and it said, if you want to get abortion ended, it's got to be at the state level. And it's amazing how zero pro-lifers even acknowledge that idea or even attempt to even try it. How many states would eliminate that right now if you went from the state level? I mean, I think there was 12 last year that said they were putting in laws to abolish abortion in their own states. And very slim number of pro-lifers were backing that up. But we got to go get Roe. We got to go. What do you see? You got all these people going to the children's festival of March for Life. Sorry, I don't enjoy it. I went one time. I thought Father Isaac, when he talked about it once, was nuts, because he said, I'll never go back. I can't believe there was too many people there. I thought he was crazy about it. Then I go. And I thought he was right. There's people there. Everyone's taking photos, selfies. It's like, hey, it's a fun time. Everyone, what are you here for? And every year they come back. Voris did a thing about 10 years ago. Go, see you next year, because they already have it scheduled, knowing that nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And
if you do it at the state level, you could end this thing. You could end it in South Carolina. You could end it in Virginia. You could end it wherever you are. But everyone's focused on D.C. It goes back to think locally, act locally. Everyone's focused on D.C. voting. How many people are talking about the governor, the North Carolina governor? There's 9 states, I think, running for new governors. 0 people are talking about those elections. You're going to have some clown, as Joe Biden would say, get into office with about 100 votes, and they're going to run your life in your local area, and you have no idea.
So just one of you have to take this on, because I can already see the comments section on this video. They'll say, you guys are so, Amy Cohen Barrett, you're going to attack her. She's not good enough. Nobody's good enough. Why can't you just get behind her and support her, et cetera, et cetera? But
Okay,
what would you say to that?
The other lady, what's her name? Goida, right? Or Guy?
Yeah, I saw her. Yeah.
She has a far more interesting record. One, she is pro-life, and two, she challenges state authority. She challenges prosecutors. She actually stands up to power drunk DAs that don't want to prosecute crimes that are actual crimes and want to prosecute some guy for misfiling paperwork. Mm-hmm. So in things like that, when cops do misstep, because the thing is, when the cops do misstep, you need to have the state to basically correct that situation. Otherwise, the public loses the trust in law enforcement. And once that happens, then you have of course, now it's been drummed up by the commies, but like in New York, where they're actually actively targeting cops, like when cops go out, it is like hunting season on them now, which is horrible, which is, I hope they turn on de Blasio or something, because he's helped create that in New York. But anyway, you want cops that are part of your community, that are interested in protecting the public, not in banging out doors because they're ex-military. In some cases, actually I know a couple guys are ex-military that are very good professional cops, but sometimes police departments turn them away because they're like, no, you guys, you still have your search and destroy mode in you, and you're not ready for law enforcement, which is a different game. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes they're actively recruiting guys like that, and then you have things that go on where you have a police shooting that really is shocking the conscience, shouldn't have happened. And do you want a judge that's going to just kind of paper that over? Oh, no problem. What happens when it happens to you? There was a drug thing in your neighborhood, but then they smashed down your door. Now they won't pay for it if you're lucky and there was no shooting involved. And they've taken your guns just because they happen to be there, and you're fighting for 6 months to get them back. And you're sitting, and this goes to the courts, and the judges put on side with the cops, and you lose out. You don't get anything back out of this.
Yeah,
is that what you want, or would you rather somebody upholds the rule of law?
No, you're right. It matters. It matters to you and I. It matters to the average citizen in the United States who is on the Supreme Court, for better or for worse. It definitely does matter. We spent a lot of time on the first two topics of the five. We have to keep the show moving. I would love to talk about Amy, and I think we will probably next week. One of the things that came up at the debate, though, was Trump's tax returns. First of all, how did the New York Times obtain his tax returns? How is that possible?
Isn't that identity theft?
I mean, shouldn't somebody be investigating how his tax returns were leaked? How did the IRS slip his tax returns to the New York Times? And why did it happen basically in October before the election?
Conveniently. Good timing, huh?
Yeah, it's impeccable timing. If you don't believe in the deep state, then I've got a bridge to sell you. But apparently Trump in the past couple of years hasn't paid very much in income taxes. And this is supposed to be a big scandal.
I remember when Dr. Paul was asked that, I think it was 2008, about the people not pay, half the people don't pay taxes. He goes, well, we're halfway there.
I mean, I get it. I think a lot of MAGA people say, I admire Trump because he's smart and he's figured out in the law code, in the tax code, which, the Bible is this thick and the tax code is 10 times the thickness of the Holy Bible. He has figured out how to navigate that labyrinth and pay less taxes. Good for him. That means he's smart. That means he's a good businessman. I know a lot of people who say that. I'm not going to sit here and necessarily say that per se. But isn't it legitimate that if you buy a building and you take depreciation on the building, depreciation is basically a charge where, look, the building over time is going to be worth less because you're going to have to fix it. So if the tax code says, well, they want to incentivize people, especially in these opportunity zones, to go and buy buildings. He took the depreciation just like the tax law says he could, and that reduced his taxable income. I mean, it should be a non-issue, right?
It should be. I mean, everyone who's making an issue out of it, I put the question to them this way. are you willing to pay more on your taxes when you do your taxes and you look at, that's not enough. The government really needs more money. So I'm going to give them another $1,000 of my money because I just should to be a good citizen. I'm sorry. No, you're not going to do that. Nobody is going to do that. And that's basically what we're talking about here. You can make the argument that, well, hold on. He's only paying that much. That means as a percentage, he's paying a far lower percentage than we are. All right, and that's true, and maybe that's not fair. And I don't think that's properly fair. Of course, I don't believe in taxes at all anyway, as a quasi-anarchist of sorts. But beside any of that, if you're going to have taxes, it should really be at a kind of a more flat percentage, rather than this kind of weird mess that we have. But then that's why you want to get that changed. As it stands, though, every single corporation in this country, everyone from a George Soros to a Chuck Schumer to a Donald Trump to fill in the blanks on the other side, Koch brothers and George Soros. So the two opposite sides doing largely the same stuff. And guess what? They do the exact same thing on their taxes. They pay as little as they can. They get out of as much as they can. They squeak by. That's because the system is written to do that. And so Trump just did what everyone else is doing. But again, the Trump derangement syndrome setting in. We hate Trump, so therefore everything he's doing is wrong. And it's being sold as if he avoided, as if it's tax evasion, as if he did not pay taxes he legitimately owed. Rather than, look, you Democrats and you Republicans both crafted this system with all the loopholes and extensions you could possibly get, so that GE, General Electric Corporation, paid no taxes in 2016. None.
Yeah, and can we not also acknowledge? I mean, I'm surprised I'm making this argument and not you, Steve. We should at least point out that the federal income tax is unconstitutional. It's a novelty. It was designed to be a one-year income tax to pay for the Great War, World War I, that war that no one even talks about or remembers from 100 years ago. And then it was extended to a second year because, World War I was really expensive. Did you know that before 1917 or 18 when we got the federal income tax? Before that, there was no federal income tax in America, and yet we were a sovereign nation, and we fought wars. We beat the British. We somehow survived. We did have roads. How did we survive without a federal income tax? We've only had it for 100 years, and now we just take it as a given that everybody should pay taxes, and Trump needs to pay his fair share. Can we not at least acknowledge the fact that federal income taxes are not even supposed to be a thing? And now the actual debate is whether or not it should be 10% or 20% or 30% or 40%. Can we not? I mean, let's get back to the real debate of why do we even have this thing?
On the debate, it was kind of funny because Trump did tell Joe, "You wrote the law. I'm just going around it. I'm just playing using your thing," which he said.
Yeah, that
was a great line back.
Yeah.
Yes, it's actually, I know this isn't a popular thing. It's not an opinion. It's kind of like conspiracy fact. It's a plank of the Communist freaking manifesto. It's number 2. Heavy progressive graduate income tax.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, when people start saying communism's come to our land, it's been here. As Father John Hardin, the late great Father John Hardin said, the United States is the greatest Marxist land in the world. We are one. It's first step of admitting you're an alcoholic or knowing you're an alcoholic is admitting you have a problem and then fixing it. Let's admit we have the problem. How do we fix it? Now we can eliminate the 16th Amendment by making another amendment to eliminate that, but then you'd have to vote the right people in. Good luck ever that happening.
You just blew up the chat, Steve.
What?
You just blew up the chat.
Yeah, that's it. Send all hate mail to Steve.
Ryan sent a great article. Now, forgive the language. I'll put it in the show notes if you want to read it, but viewer beware. And I'll edit out what he says in here. But it said, first off, morality doesn't have anything to do with taxation. You pay what you legally owe. Nobody willingly pays the government more than they legally owe. I think this was an accountant's guide to why you're a gullible moron is the title of the article. He ends up going, so when the professor asked why to this one kid, he said one kid didn't take advantage of all the obvious deductions for his clients. Professor asked why, and the kid said some mushy thing about how he didn't think it was fair to keep money from the government. And the professor ripped him and said, "How dare you? It's not the government's money. It's your client's money. You owe them the best. It's your sacred duty to save their money." Because it finishes, "You disgust me. You should never be a CPA." It's your money. The government, if was it the old line of getting render to Caesar, obviously. But if they say, well, if the church can only get 10%, why does the government get 40? Why not have a little flat tax, like as Ryan said, same level for everybody? So you just cut the check at the end of the time and send it in. Sure, okay. Let's have. We're not. I'm all for. As Ryan, taxes legalize theft. But all right, if we're gonna have them, make it big unfair and not some kind of, loopholes here, loopholes here, loopholes here, 80% here, 5% here. GE doesn't pay anything. Amazon.
Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Now, I will tell you, as a recovering accountant,
I thought you were gonna say alcoholic.
As a recovering
Same
accountant,
thing.
I don't necessarily want to bankrupt all of my former colleagues and take them out of business, especially all the tax professionals, tax lawyers, tax attorneys, tax people. There's an entire industry around interpreting the labyrinth of the federal tax code and the state level tax codes. But I think we would all be better served if all those people found something else to do, and everyone just could do their taxes on a postcard and render to Caesar what is due to Caesar.
If you're talented enough to navigate the tax code, you are talented enough to succeed in many other places.
Yeah, you could do a lot of things. Yeah, exactly. You could actually you can be one of the co-hosts of the Rundown, for example. I mean,
like you said, you have to pay $400 to somebody to figure out how much money you got to give to Uncle Sam.
oh man, I pay a lot more than that to figure it out too. It's like it. And anyway, okay, so. Trump, one of the fallouts to the New York Times obtaining his tax returns is that they're claiming that he's really not a billionaire and that he's really not part of the 1%. We found out this week that someone else is part of the 1% that we didn't even know. And that's the Holy Father, Pope Francis.
It's funny, too, because he was just calling out Trump for evading taxes and tax evasion's a sin or whatever it was. Almost like it was all scripted. New York Times gets this. Next thing you know, the Pope's out with this statement. And lo and behold, La Repubblica, in Italian newspaper, communist paper, they break how terrible it is that the Pope's confidential bank account has been hacked. And 20 million pounds sterling, said in Italian, sterline, pounds sterling, not euros, not dollars. I don't know why you'd have dollars, but euros, right? You'd think. Nope, not those either. Pounds sterling were stolen from the Holy Father. So, and it's this odd level of corruption. The timing is rather significant because it comes like a week after he fires Cardinal Becciu for all this financial mismanagement. Now, granted, this is speculation. I don't have anything beyond the La Repubblica story that the Pope has the secret bank account with 20 million pounds and it got stolen. I'm not sure how much of it was stolen or all of it or whatever, or whether there's $20 million pounds of a larger amount. It didn't have those details. But Becciu was, of course, involved with a massive financial mismanagement. This has been known for years, including this London property deal that happened a little while ago. And that required, the Sloan Square deal is what it was. So that, and this is reported by the Financial Times and other places. So, and Becciu was one of the people, as well as Cardinal Parolin. Becciu used to be a sostituto at the Secretary of State, where Cardinal Parolin now is. So you have all these kind of figures around the monetary mismanagement. You have even further Cardinal Maradiaga, who rails against capitalism. He rails against people making money, rails against rich people. And he has an annuity of 500,000 euros that he embezzles from a pontifical university in Honduras. That's his own personal account also. But it's all these guys are railing against Trump and money, and yet they're rolling in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is one of those stories that I wasn't sure if we were even going to bring it up, because it's just another thing. It's just another thing. You've got the Holy Father when he first took office. He starts driving like a Prius. He doesn't want to live in the papal estates. He wants to live in a little apartment. He says, "I'm the Pope of the poor." He constantly espouses this, Marxist ideology that interclass warfare, and rich people have ill-gotten gains, etc. Then it turns out that the man has a personal net worth of at least 20 million pounds sterling. I mean, give me a freaking break, man.
It's more hypocrisy. Like even in the very beginning, that the whole gesture of, oh, well, I'm not going to live in this big grand Baroque palace. I can't
Mm-hmm.
possibly do that. My sensibilities and love for the poor will be hurt. So I need to go spend 6 million euros to renovate this little rundown shack over here
Yeah.
into my residence for the poor. Wait, couldn't that money have been better spent to the poor? And instead, you have to renovate it just to make it A, livable, and B, to provide the security necessary. And the same thing with, drive a little Fiat, and things of this sort. Yet he's still taking airplane trips all around the world. If you really wanted to say, hey, well, I'm going to help the poor, stop all these trips everywhere needlessly all the time, cut your budget, get rid of extraneous offices, and start using that money to help Rome's very copious poor by building public works, by building things that pay jobs. There's so many things that could be done. But instead,
Right.
It's like, let me put these millions into a new residence so I can show I'm the Pope of the poor. So that kind of hypocrisy, and it's noted. Italians know it. Just the last time I was in Rome a few years ago, just not even saying anything, people come up and complain to me about the Pope. And I'm obviously not Italian. Even when I get back and I get the fluency back and I can start thinking and speaking in Italian a lot better than I can normally, I could never pass for an Italian. And people are just complaining about the Pope. Or, what do you do in Rome? Oh, sto lavorando al Vaticano. Oh, al Vaticano. And they get mad. And they start going off about how much they hate Pope Francis. Just average Romans, diocesan priests, you name it. So this kind of hypocrisy is noted and loathed.
Yeah.
Versus you get John Paul II, who's also a foreigner, and he's Polish, and the Italians have various jokes for Polish people. Yet he was beloved. He's still loved in Rome. He's still remembered very fondly. Not so Papa Francesco.
Well, while we're on the topic of the Holy Father, our fourth story today involves the deal that he cut in China. We haven't really talked about that deal on the rundown. Let's just say it's a bum deal for the Chinese Catholics, and they are certainly got the short end of the stick. Cardinal Zen, who's one of the leading prelates in China, is able to escape that communist dumpster fire for a couple days to get to Rome. He seeks an audience with the Holy Father, and I saw a tweet this morning from James Martin, SJ, where he is saying, "Hey, just a year ago today, I had my private audience with Pope Francis, and we talked about all kinds of things, including the QRS people." And so the Holy Father is able to make time to meet with James Martin, but he had no time to meet with Cardinal Zen. None. Cardinal Zen is there in Rome. He's knocking on the door. Holy Father, please meet. I'm one of your cardinals. Hello. Sorry, just can't make the scheduling work. How's that thing? How's that a thing?
Because it goes back to the money. Granted, this is rumor, but one of the people have asked, why is the Vatican doggedly sticking to this China deal, which everyone in the church seems to hate except the Vatican? Chinese Catholics have groaned under it. There's that lady back at New Year's that tried to grab the Pope's hand and got him off balance. And he starts smacking her and all these things, right? So all her jokes about Pope slaps and whatnot. She was Chinese, and she was coming to ask the Pope about China, but why he's betrayed the church in China.
Mm-hmm.
You have so many, different angles that, and people have suggested the Vatican's getting funded by the Chinese in exchange for the Vatican giving them a free hand with the local situation. They're, why is it so important to have that diplomatic, contact with the Chinese? Why is it so important? There's only one reason for that. Well, there's a couple where they go into more, deep conspiracy theories that I don't know if we want to really touch on this show with a 10-foot pole, but ultimately there's funding involved. That's the only explanation for why they stick to this deal and have betrayed the church in China. So,
But I mean, imagine being a general.
We don't want to meet with the critic of it because it also tick off the Chinese if we do.
Imagine being a general and not having time to meet with one of your battlefield commanders, especially like the one who's in a kinetic fight. It's one thing, like if there's a part of the world, like let's say in Africa where the church is doing well and it's growing, and of course every church, every aspect of the church has its various issues or whatever. But just imagine not making time to meet with your guy who's in the fight right now. He's in the forward battle area, and he comes back to the to the camp and needs to meet with you, and you have no time for him. And then Pope Francis makes no time to meet with Pompeo, the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, who wants to talk to him about the Vatican-Chinese deal, and it's very much on his mind, and he's making public statements about it. What is he doing? What is he doing if not trying to better the state of Catholics who are behind enemy lines, either in California or China?
Yeah, same thing these days. Well, I mean, it's and that's why it goes to my theory that there's some monetary arrangement between the Chinese and the Vatican that's given, because dialogue in and of itself even wouldn't be enough of a motivator for what's going on. Now, John Paul II eagerly desired dialogue with the Chinese, but he would never, as Cardinal Zen has noted, because he was with John Paul II when they rejected deals like that in Benedict, and so it's so why is he doing it? He's whatever the motivation is, whether it is money or it's something else, it's not the good of the church in China.
Yeah. We have another story about a cardinal in Rome. Okay, another ecclesiastical story, and this one involves Cardinal Pell. We talked a little bit about Cardinal Pell last week when we unearthed this story about Cardinal Becciu and his resignation / being fired. There's some money laundering going on with Becciu's brothers. There's a whole lot to unpack there. We all sort of know the history of Cardinal Pell. He was falsely accused of something. It was so ridiculous that the Australian High Court overturned it, pulled him out of jail, and has vindicated his record. Cardinal Pell was involved with the Vatican Bank. He was auditing the Vatican Bank, and then he suddenly went down with a scandal. He's now back in, I guess, good standing, and he's in Rome, right?
Well, Steve, you want to?
I got nothing on these stories, man.
Okay, because I
don't keep up with them.
All right. Well, so Cardinal Pell. So a lot of people have been looking at this, saying, "Oh, look, see, Cardinal Pell's back in favor of the Pope, and he's going to go back to cleaning up the Vatican Bank." I wish I could believe that. I want to believe that. There's just certain things of Cardinal Pell that I just question how far he'll end up being able to go. And so the people who are close to him said he's a fairly holy man. He was unjustly targeted, but with this like Becciu's alleged context, I need to do it correctly, with the mafia and stuff like that, came and reached in all this stuff in Australia, and it's what caused all the problems. And now he's back. Becciu's gone, so now he's going to fix it. And that's what people are saying. Now, in Scripture, it tells us, do not put your trust in princes. And history tells us not to put your trust in princes of the church. And so I certainly hope and pray that Pell's going to Rome is a good sign. It's a sign that, things might change and get cleaned up. I'm not convinced, one man alone in the cardinalate is not going to have the ability to change it all. It's going to have to come, a mix of, you need saints influencing, and you're going to need a saintly pope at some stage that's willing to get everything in order, to really actually change things instead of giving lip service to it. So I'm not holding my breath that Pell's going to Rome actually means we're going to suddenly have this financial cleanup.
It's certainly something to watch. All right, it's time for the unpopular opinion segment. This is the highlight of the show. Everyone waits for it.
Hasn't this whole show been unpopular opinion segment?
Just to finish the last topic, I posted
if you don't think that we have given you opinions that are unpopular enough, we have a specific segment designed around giving you even more unpopular things than what have already been said. So This week, we're going to go around. We're each going to give an unpopular opinion, and then you're going to vote on Twitter. And if you're not on Twitter, sorry. I mean, this is a Twitter poll. I saw comments. What if I want to vote in the poll and I'm not on Twitter? Well, this is a Twitter poll. Okay, so sorry.
Get your friends who are on Twitter to come vote for you.
Yes, and
Vote by
brother.
proxy.
Now, Brother Martin had a long winning streak. He won several in a row. He's not here today, so he can't win. So now we can have a real poll, a legitimate election, so to speak, right? Because we've taken him off the ballot. We've removed him from the ballot.
Brother Chewy can't stuff the ballots.
That's right. That's right. Or harvest them. That's the new phrase, harvesting ballots. Steve, what is your unpopular opinion for this week, October 2nd?
I had one and I totally forgot what it was.
You forgot your unpopular opinion. Okay, we'll go to Ryan then and let you think about it.
Okay, so I've kind of already given most of my unpopular opinion, but my unpopular opinion is essentially that Amy Coney Barrett will not overturn Roe versus Wade, that the pro-life movement will again be sucker punch, hoodwinked, whatever, and have trusted in princes, as it were, and voting Republican all these years, because that's going to get us something, rather than having engaged in the Catholic and Christian action locally that could have possibly changed things on abortion. So the whole trust in your Supreme Court's a huge mistake, and my unpopular opinion is Amy Coney Barrett will end up, because of what her colleagues and her record shows, her love of precedent, and you have umpteen cases defending Planned Parenthood versus Casey and Roe versus Wade. So when you have that, I don't see her setting that aside.
Okay. So Ryan's unpopular opinion, ACB will not overturn Roe v. Wade. I'll give mine so you can keep thinking, Steve.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and go now if you want.
Are you ready? Okay, go ahead.
That was from the last segments. I'm going, all right, well, here's an unpopular. I'll take it from the Beneficantis video we posted a couple days ago, which is getting a ton of flack from the Beneficantis, where John, not Salsa, but Cisco had a great point. Said we deserve the leaders we get, and we deserve the Holy Father. And if anybody's watching and say we're bashing, you better be praying for him. If your dad was an alcoholic beater of you, it's still your dad. So you better be saying some Hail Marys for him. If we pray, as he said, Cisco said, if we were praying more than we were talking about him, we'd probably have a saintly pope. So right now we don't deserve a good pope, good bishops, etc. And I got this guy, Tim Calbus. Hey, how you doing out there, Tim? Says he watches all the time, and he sent me a prayer card. Remember Scott's prayer request for one of his friends' kids? Somebody that was doing well. Tim thought it was my kid that had cancer, and God bless you for doing this for me, but it was for another guy. Anyways, he mentions that in Chicago at Our Lady of Sorrows Basilica on the west side of Chicago, the priest was talking about, or he spoke with a service provincial today, and he talked about during the Great Depression and during the World War II wars, there were 80,000 people crammed into the basilica to pray to the Lord and his mother. There are numerous side altars. Have you ever seen The Untouchables? There's a scene in it from, you look it up, just Google it, and you'll see the photos. It's fantastic. But think of 80,000 people crammed into the basilica. If, say, the bishops and priests got their heads on order and got out of the religion of COVID, which it is a superstition. You're putting a mask on, it's superstition. The socialist distancing, it's a superstition. If you're priest and you're practicing all these things and you're dumping this, you're acting like you just got done dressing like you're just got done working on cars, it's a superstition. I thought we were into superstition. But anyway, say the priests and bishops open up the church. Would 80,000 people show up at that basilica like that to pray for the times we're in? My unpopular opinion is we don't deserve anything good, because you're not going to find 80,000. You're not going to find 80,000 people to show up in all the churches in the entire state if they open up tomorrow, much less one basilica. So we got to fix ourselves first.
All right, Steve's unpopular opinion: we deserve everything we're getting. Mine is related. Mine is related to Ryan's unpopular opinion, but it's a little bit different. So my unpopular opinion is that the Republican Party has zero interest in ending the genocide of abortion in the United States. They have no plan to do it. Not regardless of Amy Cohen Barrett being seated or not seated on the Supreme Court. If you remove the issue of abortion, which animates so many voters to the polls, then the Republicans would have a hard time even getting elected. There are so many single issue voters in the United States. There are so many people who see it for what it is. It is the genocide and murder of innocent babies, offering them to the pagan god of Moloch, a sacrifice on the altar of Moloch in exchange for power, money, wealth, and comfort. If you remove that as an issue, if Republicans had to run on tort reform and the Second Amendment and lower taxes, they would never win, because those things don't animate people the way the issue of life animates people. So they are not invested in ending abortion, and that's why we haven't seen it twice in the past 20 years. We have had the White House, the Congress, the Senate, and we haven't gotten it done. We haven't even defunded Planned Parenthood. George W. Bush had 2 years to do it. He didn't do it. Donald J. Trump had 2 years to do it. He didn't do it. So it doesn't matter if you vote for Republicans. They will not, in Congress or in the White House, end abortion. Yes, maybe the Supreme Court will someday, if we have an overwhelming majority. I'm not sure that Amy Cohen Barrett is going to help or not. But my unpopular opinion is that the Republican establishment, the party, the people who run for office, either in the Congress, the Senate, or for the presidency, will not lift a finger to end abortion in America. They haven't defunded Planned Parenthood, and there's a reason why. If Trump could have defunded Planned Parenthood via executive order, if he can pay for a wall that's not appropriated funds, if he can divert funds from the DOD budget to build a wall between the United States and Mexico, he can defund Planned Parenthood with those same executive powers. And yet he hasn't done it. Think about that. That's my unpopular opinion.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, I remember him saying that. I wish I could find that clip. But someone asked him, because he was a OBGYN and 100% pro-life, and they were asking, why is your pro-life bills being shut down in Congress and by other pro-lifers? And he said, well, if they've ended up destroying taking abortion out, what would they run on?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was the unpopular opinion segment. Any shameless plugs this week? I have none.
Well, I have one. I just need 1 second to grab it here.
Yeah, go get your shameless plug. Brother's not here. We can't talk about his monastery.
I got a solutions plug.
Oops. Okay, so Saturday in the traditional calendar, today in the Novus Ordo calendar is the feast of Saint Therese of Lisieux, and we have a special book, Saint Therese and the Faithful. And this particular book is written by a priest, goes through the so I'll show a page off so you can see the layout and stuff, cool effects we do for it. And it's a great book on how to live everyone talks about the little way. Well, what is it? So this book basically explains what the little way is and how you as laity can live it out in the world to get toward what Steve was talking about, getting holier, less endless debates on Twitter. I saw this meme on Twitter the other day where you have a theological question and the guy's standing in front of 3 doors, and one says, read a catechism. Door number 2 is ask a priest. Number 3 is ask clueless people on Twitter. And the guy's kicking down door number 3. Right? Don't do that. Whether you buy my book or not. There's other books in St. Therese to buy. But anyway, so for her feast day, I know what she would want you to do. She would want you to be getting your spiritual life in order and focusing on prayer. And if that's the case, then this would be a useful book toward that end.
Very good.
St. Therese and the Faithful.
And not to take a clip from somebody else that Ryan and I like watching, but let's be a part of solutions too. Yeah, on the show we'll bring up a bunch of problems, but solutions-based ideas. Obviously, evangelize your neighbors, talk to your neighbors, get to know them, be the fun Catholics in the street, even if you might be the only Catholics, and then try to turn your street into a Catholic street. But Mike and I have been talking about some devotion for the last month, and our Lord in that devotion, he says this is a solution. Now, if we can get that out, I think Leo DuPont, if you had 10,000 miracles, if you knew somebody that had 10,000 miracles, wouldn't you want to read about, talk about him, show, learn what the heck he did to do 10,000 miracles? And that's the devotion to the Holy Face that we're trying to get kind of not resurrected again. Wish more people would talk about it.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. The devotion of the Holy Face was given to us in the 19th century. The Venerable Leo DuPont was the Holy Man of Tours. There's a book that Tan puts out called Holy Man of Tours. Tan also puts out another book called The Golden Arrow. And the truth is that this devotion is the only devotion given to us by our Lord in which he specifically says it is the weapon against communism. Sister Mary of St. Peter would not have even heard the word communism because the Communist Manifesto was being written concurrently with her lifetime, and she was a cloistered nun. She was not going to ever hear that word, communism, and yet she says that our Lord says to defeat communism, you need this devotion to my holy face. So thanks for bringing that up, Steve. I want to become an apostle of the Holy Face. I've got a 2x3 foot image of the Holy Face as the centerpiece of our living room now. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, we recite the chapel. Sometimes we say the little office of the Holy Face. And every time we hear a blasphemy, I try to say the Golden Arrow prayer.
I thought you were going to say you would be like Leo and punch him in the face.
Yeah, he was.
Anybody not didn't know that. Leo
our Lord, it turns out that our Lord. It turns out that our Lord is very focused on the first 3 commandments.
Who knew?
He doesn't like being blasphemed. He doesn't like you doing work on Sundays. I mean, he is the Lord your God, period, end of story. We, as human, we like to focus on, not stealing and not murdering, on all the things that affect us. But it turns out that he's very concerned about the things that affect him. And blasphemy is one of those things that is just all too common today.
Yeah, go to Vistaprint. I don't want to pitch them all the time, but go to Vistaprint. Get an 11 by 17. I got 11 by 17. Mike got a 2 mile by 3 mile one. He's got the bat signal flying on it, so he outdid everybody. But order a bunch of copies, hand them out to friends, take them to your parish, hand them out to people in your parish, hand it out to your priest. See if you can get a nice frame and ask your priest to put it up in the parish somewhere. We gotta work this out, guys. I had my good friend of mine that's a priest called me up yesterday. Said he got turned in by somebody in the parish because he didn't have a face muzzle on during a certain time. So it's not just the priests we know in Colorado doing it, getting it. There's all over getting it. It's just going to get worse. And until bishops come out and we need some. I hear Bishop Strickland and all these other guys are on our side. I don't know. I wish Corleone would put the gauntlet down on Pelosi when he says, I'm going to open up the church, and Pelosi says, no, you're not. We're sticking with science. He should put the hammer down and talk about abortion afterwards. Mm. And then if a priest gets kicked out of their diocese, like let's say maybe a Father Altman, if he does, then that bishop should say, come to my place. You will be taken care of, and you can preach whatever you want. But right now, we're getting our butts kicked.
This is the Rundown Show. Thanks for watching. God bless you. Subscribe to the channel, like the page, do all those things. Until next week.